Hello, my name is Gerhard Adam, and in this module, we're going to look at how we can define a job, or basically create the job card necessary to identify a unit of work. So specifically, what we're going to be looking at is the coding and the creation of the job statement within our JCL. If you recall from the previous module, the basic format of a JCL statement includes the // identifying the JCL statement itself, the name field, which may or may not be optional depending on the usage, but in the case of the job card, it will be required since it identifies the job itself. The operation field, which is in this case is going to be specified as job, indicating that it's a job statement, and then our various positional and keyword parameters. So as an example, the job statement itself is going to look like this. We're going to have the // identifying it as JCL. We have a job name, which can consist of 1 to 8 characters. Then we have the job operation field, and then we have positional parameters that are the accounting information and the programmer name field, and then various keyword parameters that we can code based on the installation standards governing where we are going to run. So the job name is going to be a value between 1 and 8 characters. Now, it should be understood that the job name itself is largely going to be governed by installation standards. And very often what ends up happening is that the installation may have a standard, for example, that requires that a programmer test job, for example, might consist of their TSO user ID plus 1 additional character to differentiate it from the user ID itself. And that would allow multiple unique jobs to be run. The name itself can be any alphanumeric character, including the national characters of the $, £, and @. Those are the only characters that can be used within a job name itself. If there is a duplicate name, then the second job with the duplicate name, or however many there are, will be delayed until the one currently running completes. This is a technique that has often been exploited if you wanted to run several jobs in a row, is by giving them the same name, they would be held in the order in which they were submitted, and then once each job ended, then the next one would automatically start up. That option, though, is now available to be turned off within the JES settings themselves. And since JES represents the job entry subsystem that's responsible for handling submissions like this is an option now that needs to be considered whether or not duplicates are going to be allowed in the environment. Always remember that when it comes to using job names as well as many of the other parameters on the job statement, to always review your installation standards. Most companies have rules governing what the names should be, what they represent, and what they are used to identify. So even though the JCL itself can allow you to code a variety of different values, many installations will actually have system exits that enforce the values that they want in their system. As a result, familiarity with your installation standards is a necessity, ensuring that you correctly code the job statement. One of the first positional parameters deals with accounting information. And there are 2 forms of accounting information that are available. An installation-defined set of accounting values means that you can literally code anything that you want. However, as we said, if the installation has standards, they may well have system exits that enforce those standards. Occasionally, you may have an installation that has a certain standard, but they may not enforce it. And as a result, you could conceivably code virtually anything that you wanted to there, and it would still work. An installation may also opt to have no accounting information required, in which case you can specify this field or not, as the case may be, but nevertheless it will work, and it's simply going to be treated as documentation kind of information. If the installation has opted to use the JES2 accounting information, then the specific fields within the accounting field have meaning. So that what we have is we have a programmer account number, we have a room number, time, lines, and things of that sort that are each positional. And so that means if we don't have a value for those, we need to account for their absence by coding a comma in its place. So, for example, in the case of the installation-defined accounting information, we are limited to 143 characters of accounting information. This would be a lot of information. In most environments, they may have up to 8 characters, or they may have a couple of different parameters that are specified. But generally speaking, you will never see anything that even approaches 143 characters. Special characters, or if you have spaces, given the fact that spaces result in the JCL being interpreted as a different field, then we need to enclose those in single quote marks if they are going to be used. So any special characters or any spaces that are a part of the name need to be enclosed in single quote marks so that they are interpreted as a single field. Parameters can be continued onto the second line, and again, we would simply end where we are with a comma and begin on the next line then prior to column 17. The parentheses themselves are going to be used as a vehicle for enclosing the parameters that we have coded. And so we always begin and end a set of accounting parameters with parentheses. And then each of the individual areas will be separated by commas. And again, the commas are counted then towards that 143 character maximum. With the JES2 accounting information, we end up with several fields, for example, that involve the programmer accounting number, programmer room number. Now, both of these are values that are going to be established by the installation. You can obviously make up almost anything you want in here, but very often your installation may have some specific values that they want you to use. And those would be the items that you would code in here. Now, since these are controlled by JES, again, it's entirely possible that the installation has system exits, for example, that may validate what's been coded there, and as a result produce errors if you violate those standards. The time can be coded here, which is an estimate of execution time in minutes. The number of lines that you're going to be generating in thousands. Number of cards that you may punch. This field, obviously, with the absence of card punches these days, is going to have no values in them. Any special forms that you might need to identify that the output is going to be created on. The number of copies of output that you want generated. Whether or not the JES log should be included in the output. And the line count indicating how many lines of output per page. Now, as I said, these values here are very often going to be used if the installation wants to use JES accounting to keep track of this. However, most of the time, you will find that it's going to be installation-defined accounting values that will be used on the job statement. In addition, we have the programmer name field. This is a second positional parameter. In this particular case here, this is often used to put a name or some indication or a description of the particular job that you are running. It's confined to 20 characters in length, and again, if you have any special characters or anything else, then it needs to be enclosed in single quote marks, especially if there are spaces involved as well. If we do not have this coded, we do not need to indicate its absence. Since it is the last positional parameter, if we leave it off, we can begin immediately with keyword parameters after the accounting information.